Okay, today we're going to create a new project. I call this one Project Bullseye. Um, and what we're going to do is we're going to work with the view controller. I already put a hit me button in, so this is like before. We're going to then change some of the things, the settings, because we're going to go in landscape instead of portrait here. So you can go to the right hand side up there, the toolbar, and change it to landscape. Once you see that you changed the landscape, you're going to have to move the button around because it doesn't automatically do that for you. And you can see the snap grid lines here. That way I can get it kind of in the center of it, perfectly in the center. We're going to move it down a little bit later anyways, but just so you have the right idea. Okay, so what we're doing today, we already showed you that we changed it to a portrait. But there's a couple other settings that you can do also to change this to a portrait, or from portrait to landscape. Because we changed the setting on the right hand side and like the attributes to go ahead and become a landscape object, but we didn't change everything. So you can see here, I'm just demonstrating that it's still in portrait. I have it snapped to kind of like the center. And I wanted this to be landscape, so that way our game is going to be able to play in the landscape mode. Most apps you can flip them around, obviously, so you can have a portrait or landscape left or landscape right. We're going to go ahead and we are working with just the landscape. And you also can see the size can depend on things too, because right now I have the Retina display. No, whereas you can have a 4-inch or a 3.5-inch Retina display depending on if you're working with an iPhone 5, iPhone 4, or if you're working with a 3, then it's a non-Retina display. So we're going to work with a Retina display which has twice the pixels as the non-Retina display. You can also see I can go to constraints here in the objects, and I can change the size by like 1 pixel at a time. Whereas actually it's not 1 pixel, it's 1 position, because it used to be 1 pixel whenever it was a non-Retina display, but now if you use a Retina display, it's basically 2 pixels because it's twice the resolution. Well, what we're going to do here is, this is the startup, so supported interface orientations. We don't want to have portrait selected anymore. We're going to unselect that, and we want this landscape left and landscape right, because either one, we don't care if the home button is on the left or right hand side. We just want to make sure that it's in landscape only. So that way, it forces you to run it in landscape. So you can see here when I run it, because before if I ran it and I did not have this supported interface, it would have the button in the right location or right text direction. Whereas if I turned it, it would follow and the text would flip. Well, I want it to only be able to rotate just like this. When I rotated left, you can see that I had the text is going up and down because it's not supported in that. It's only supported in a landscape mode only. That's why we had some of the bugs with some of the apps, because they changed this in the new the new Xcode. They changed a little bit of settings. Before you had to actually go to the code and change the support of the views in the code instead of just changing from landscape to portrait or portrait to landscape. Before, you can see this right here, and I'll blow this up, but you don't need this code anymore because the new Xcode, which I have, I'll check the version here a little bit, but if you have a newer Xcode, you don't have to have the object orientation should be landscape or portrait. It'll run the same with or without it now. Before, in previous simulators, previous Xcode, you had to have that piece of code if you wanted to start up and flip to the landscape orientation, and only be in the landscape orientation. You can see it comes up just like the landscape orientation. You can obviously switch that with your settings whenever you're running it, debugging it. And you can see mine's 4.52. So that I know with this version you do not have to have that little piece of code about switching to landscape orientation. You just have to have the settings that we set up in the at the beginning of the video here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some things to our user interface here. We're going to have we're going to add a round button first. So we're just going to go ahead and add a round rectangular button. And we're going to change the size of it. Do this one first because sometimes for some reason, if once you change this to the type here, the button type to a light information one, it will sometimes snap to the wrong place. So you can see it just has a little circle with an eye on it now, and that's an actual button, but it was just a regular rectangle button that we changed. We're then going to put some labels in here, so just don't worry too terribly much about the location. I just drag them in here, and then we'll change them, the text and everything later. So I'm just going to put some labels at the top, label on the right and left side, and then at the bottom I'm going to put a whole bunch of labels too. I put another button on the left hand side, and then I'm going to put a slider bar on here, and I want to drag the slider bar bigger because this is going to be part of our game. We're going to try to guess the number basically and slide the bar to that number. So after I had the bar adjusted and where I want to, I'm going to change the value of it here. So the value of it, I want to change it from I want the value to start at 1 and end at 100 is what I want the value to be. And then I want the bar to be right in the middle, so that would be 50. So I start at 1, ended at 100, and had the dot at 50, because that's right in the middle. Well, pretty much. And then once we debug this, you should be able to see that you can move the slider and do everything, but obviously none of the buttons really work. Your hit me button, you do want to code that so that one will work like it did before. And you can see my labels and stuff is a little bit messed up, and the reason why is I have an iPhone 3 here instead of an iPhone 4 or anything, so my screen's a little bit smaller. But you do see everything works, and I'm going to have to go ahead and change the simulator that I'm running in here. So once I do the device and change it, it takes a while to switch it because I switched it in this one. So you can see it change, and now it's landscape mode. I'll have to exit out of this and restart it, and then it should hopefully work the second time. Okay, so like you saw at the last one, it didn't come up right. I had to switch the simulator. Once I switched the simulator and then restarted the program, it should work perfectly. Switch it and then rerun it, and it should hopefully pop up fine this time. And it's going to be large because it's going to be double the size because the Retina display has twice the pixels, so just so you can see more detail and everything. So it is going to be a little bit larger than a regular phone, iPhone 3. Alright, hopefully it loads here. This takes a while since I'm screen recording too. Alright, maybe. There we go. There we go. So you can see everything's twice the size it should be because of the graphics that I have on my screen, the pixel sizes on my screen compared to the pixels on the 4-inch Retina display of an iPhone. They're per inch, they have more pixels than a computer screen does. So that's why everything's so large. But you can see I can drag this, I can press the buttons, they don't do anything. You can see that the info has a little bit different. I had the labels, everything else is done right here. So that's what we're after right now. Alright, this is sure what the program should look like now whenever we're done. I coded the hit me button just so I know when I press that button what action comes up. I have the IB action like we did before. If you don't remember how to do that, go back to the previous videos and you can look at how to code a button. So now if I have hit me, I have the title bullseye, you hit me, try again, and we'll change that text later on, but just have it something like that so that way you know that button is actually working correctly. Everything else isn't doing anything yet, so we just have the button coded to that point. Basically what we're going to do is this, it's gonna pick a random number, you're gonna try to guess it, you're gonna press hit me, and it's gonna give you a score on how close you are. So that's about it.